The galaxy was vast, cold, and full of secrets. Among its countless stars and planets, there existed an empire that ruled with an iron fist, an empire known as the Zeroth Dominion. For thousands of years, they had stretched their dominion across hundreds of star systems, bending civilizations to their will and crushing any who dared oppose them. Their power was absolute, their technology unmatched, and their arrogance uncheckable. They believed themselves to be the pinnacle of order in a chaotic universe. But now, something new had caught their attention, something small, insignificant, and yet strangely unsettling. It came from a tiny blue planet orbiting a yellow sun at the edge of the galaxy. The planet's name was Earth, and its inhabitants were called humans. To the Zeroth, humans were like insects, disorganized, unpredictable, and seemingly harmless. Yet, over the centuries, these insects had grown bolder, spreading out into space with reckless abandon. They built ships without permission, colonized moons without treaties, and ignored every attempt by other species to communicate with them. For decades, the Zeroth watched humanity closely, debating what to do about this strange species. Some argued that humans could be useful allies if properly controlled. Others saw them as a threat too dangerous to ignore. After all, history had taught the Zeroth one thing above all else: chaos breeds destruction. And humanity? Humanity thrived on chaos. Finally, after much deliberation, the Zeroth Emperor made his decision. He stood tall in the grand throne room of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by advisors, generals, and holographic projections of distant fleets. His voice boomed through the chamber as he addressed, not just his own people, but the entire galaxy. "Citizens of the Zeroth Dominion," he declared. His words translated instantly into thousands of languages and broadcast across countless worlds. "We stand today at a crossroads. A rogue species has risen in our midst, a species that refuses to bow to reason or respect the laws of civilization. They call themselves humans, and they have brought disorder wherever they tread. We cannot allow this cancer to spread further. Therefore, I hereby declare war upon the planet Earth. Let it be known throughout the stars that the Zeroth Dominion will not tolerate such recklessness. Humanity must either submit to our rule or face annihilation." As the message echoed through the galaxy, reactions varied wildly. On some planets, rulers nodded solemnly, agreeing that humanity's unchecked expansion needed to be stopped. On others, citizens whispered nervously, wondering why the mighty Zeroth would bother with such a minor species. But on Earth itself, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. You see, humanity hadn't received the message. Not because the Zeroth failed to send it, they had transmitted it loud and clear, but because no one on Earth even knew how to listen. Humans had never joined the galactic community. They hadn't signed treaties, established embassies, or adopted universal translators. To most of them, aliens were still the stuff of science fiction movies and conspiracy theories. So when the Zeroth's declaration reached Earth, it did so in a language no human understood, using frequencies no human device monitored. In short, it went completely unnoticed back on Earth. Life carried on as usual. People woke up, went to work, argued about politics, scrolled through social media, and complained about traffic. If anyone thought about space at all, it was probably to laugh at a meme about UFOs or wonder if NASA would ever send astronauts to Mars. No one imagined that an alien empire had just declared war on their entire species that evening. However, the first hints of trouble began to surface. Amateur astronomers around the world reported seeing strange lights moving across the night sky. At first, they assumed it was just another satellite or maybe a meteor shower. But then someone noticed that the lights were behaving oddly, flying in formation, hovering over certain areas, and occasionally flashing brighter than anything natural should. Videos of the phenomenon quickly spread online. sparking debates about whether it was a hoax, a secret government experiment, or proof of extraterrestrial life. Meanwhile, deep within military installations scattered across the globe, alarms started going off. Satellites detected unusual energy signatures emanating from those same lights. Radar systems tracked their movements, confirming that whatever they were, they didn't belong to any known nation. Intelligence agencies scrambled to piece together what was happening, but the picture remained frustratingly incomplete. Without access to alien communication protocols, they couldn't decode the Zereth's original declaration. All they knew was that something big and potentially hostile was heading their way. In Washington, D.C., a group of high-ranking officials gathered in a secure briefing room. Maps and data projections covered the walls, showing the locations of the mysterious objects. One general pointed to a cluster of red dots hovering near Earth's equator. "Sir, we're detecting multiple large vessels entering low orbit," he said grimly. "Whatever these things are, they're armed. And you're telling me we have no idea who or what they are?" asked the president, rubbing his temples. "Not yet, sir," replied the head of intelligence. "But based on the trajectory and speed, they'll reach attack range within 24 hours. The room fell silent. Everyone present understood the implications. If these unidentified craft attacked, humanity would be woefully unprepared. Earth's militaries were designed to fight each other, not defend against an advanced alien force. There were no planetary shields, no unified defense network, and certainly no experience dealing with interstellar warfare. Yet, outside the confines of that secretive meeting, life continued unabated. News outlets briefly mentioned the strange lights in the sky, but most dismissed them as hoaxes or weather anomalies. Social media users joked about laser beams and little green men. Memes flooded platforms, mocking the idea of an alien invasion. Even as the situation grew more dire, humanity remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing overhead. On the streets of Tokyo, a young woman named Akiko sipped coffee while scrolling through her phone. She paused when she saw a viral video claiming aliens had declared war on Earth. Laughing, she showed it to her friend. "Can you imagine?" she said. "Aliens invading us? Like, what would they even want?" Her friend shrugged. "Maybe our Wi-Fi passwords." They both laughed, unaware that less than a mile away, a team of scientists was frantically analyzing data suggesting the exact opposite. That humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet. In London, a middle-aged man named Thomas sat in his apartment, glued to the news. Unlike most people, he took the report seriously. An avid fan of science fiction, he'd always believed contact with extraterrestrials was inevitable. Now, staring at footage of the glowing lights, he felt a mix of excitement and dread. "This is real," he muttered to himself. "It has to be." He tried calling his local MP to express concern, but the line was busy. Shrugging, he turned back to his computer and started typing a blog post titled, "Why We Should Take Alien Invasion Seriously." By morning, it would receive exactly 3 views. Across the Atlantic, in New York City, a teenager named Marcus played video games late into the night. Between matches, he checked Twitter and saw tweets about the supposed alien invasion. Rolling his eyes, he retweeted one with the caption, "If aliens really wanted to invade, they'd pick better timing." Hashtag Monday Blues. What Marcus didn't know was that high above him, invisible to the naked eye, a massive fleet of Zereth warships prepared for battle. Their sleek, metallic hulls gleamed faintly in the sunlight as they positioned themselves strategically around Earth. Inside those ships, soldiers armed with devastating weapons awaited orders. Commanders studied maps of the planet, identifying key targets, military bases, nuclear silos, communication hubs. Everything was ready. All that remained was the signal to strike. And so, as humanity slept, laughed, argued, and dreamed. The galaxy held its breath. The Zereth Empire had declared war, expecting swift victory. What they didn't anticipate was that humanity wouldn't fight like any other species. They wouldn't surrender, negotiate, or panic. Instead, they would respond in a way uniquely their own, with chaos, creativity, and sheer determination. Unbeknownst to the Zereth, their declaration of war would ignite a firestorm unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But for now, Earth slept on, oblivious to the danger looming just beyond the horizon. The sun rose over Earth, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Birds chirped, cars honked, and coffee machines buzzed as people began their day. For most, it was just another morning, ordinary, predictable, and uneventful. But high above the planets, something extraordinary was unfolding. The Zereth fleet, a massive armada of sleek warships, had taken position around Earth's atmosphere. Their mission was clear: neutralize humanity's ability to resist before launching a full-scale invasion. Inside one of the command ships, General Vorthik stood tall, his armored frame gleaming under the dim red lights of the bridge. He was a veteran of countless battles, known for his precision and ruthlessness. To him, this mission was simply a quick strike to cripple Earth's military capabilities, followed by an offer of submission. If humanity refused, they would be exterminated. It was efficient, logical, and entirely devoid of emotion. After all, the Zereth were masters of order, and chaos had no place in their empire. Targeting systems are online, reported a subordinate, his voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Primary objectives include nuclear arsenals, communication satellites, and key military installations. Vorthik nodded, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. Begin orbital bombardment. Leave no room for error. With a single command, the first wave of attacks began. Bright streaks of energy rained down from the sky, striking strategic locations across the globe. In Russia, a missile silo erupted in flames. In the United States, a naval base crumbled under the force of the assault. Over Europe, communication towers exploded into showers of sparks. The strikes were precise, calculated, and devastating. But here's the thing about humanity: they don't play by the rules. On the ground, confusion reigned. People who had been sipping coffee or heading to work suddenly found themselves running for cover as explosions rocked their cities. At first, many assumed it was some kind of terrorist attack or a freak accident. Governments scrambled to respond, issuing emergency alerts and deploying troops to affected areas. Yet, despite the chaos, there was no panic, not yet. Humanity had faced disasters before, and they had a way of pulling together when it mattered most. In New York City, Marcus, the teenager who had joked about aliens the night before, was walking to school when the first blast hit nearby. A loud boom shook the ground, sending debris flying through the air. For a moment, everyone froze, staring at the column of smoke rising in the distance. Then, almost instinctively, people sprang into action. Some called loved ones, others helped injured strangers, and a few simply ran as fast as they could. Marcus, however, did none of those things. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started recording. "This is insane," he shouted into the camera, his voice trembling with excitement. "Aliens are attacking New York. I repeat, aliens are attacking New York." Within minutes, his video went viral. Across the world, millions watched in disbelief as footage of the attack spread online. Social media lit up with theories, jokes, and cries for help. Some claimed it was a hoax, while others insisted it was proof of government experiments gone wrong. A handful of conspiracy theorists celebrated, saying they'd predicted this exact scenario for years. Amid the noise, one thing became clear: humanity wasn't going to roll over and die without a fight. Back in Washington, D.C., the president and his advisors huddled in the Situation Room. trying to make sense of the situation. Screens displayed real-time images of the destruction, along with data feeds from satellites and reconnaissance drones. Military leaders argued over the best course of action, but the truth was undeniable. They were outgunned and unprepared. Earth's defenses were designed for human conflicts, not interstellar warfare. "We need to evacuate major cities," urged the Secretary of Defense, his face pale with stress. "If we lose our infrastructure, we'll have no way to coordinate a response." "And where do you suggest we send them?" snapped the president. "We're talking about billions of people here, not a few thousand soldiers." Before anyone could answer, a young intern burst into the room, holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. On the screen was a live feed from an amateur astronomer's telescope. It showed the Zereth fleet hovering ominously above Earth, their ships glowing faintly against the blackness of space. For a moment, everyone fell silent. They had known the threat was real, but seeing it with their own eyes made it undeniable. These weren't rogue nations or terrorists. They were aliens, and they meant business. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens were already taking matters into their own hands. In Tokyo, Akiko, the woman who had laughed off the idea of an alien invasion, found herself trapped in her office, building as alarms blared outside. She grabbed her laptop and headed to the roof, where she set up a makeshift observation post. Using software she had downloaded years ago for stargazing, she began tracking the movement of the alien ships. Her tweets quickly gained traction, providing real-time updates to thousands of followers. "They're targeting military bases and power plants," she wrote. "Stay away from those areas if you can." Her advice saved lives. As the attacks continued, people used her information to avoid danger zones, forming impromptu networks to share resources and warn others. What started as a lone effort soon grew into a grassroots movement, with volunteers coordinating relief efforts and spreading critical information. Elsewhere, in rural Texas, a group of farmers armed with rifles and tractors banded together to defend their homes. When a Zereth scout ship descended near their town, they didn't hesitate. Using whatever weapons they had, they fired at the craft until it retreated, leaving behind a trail of smoke. News of their victory spread rapidly, inspiring others to take similar action. Even children got involved. In a small village in India, a boy named Rajiv hacked into a local drone system and programmed it to fly toward the nearest alien vessel. Equipped with fireworks and homemade explosives, the drone exploded on impact, causing minor damage to the ship's hull. Though insignificant compared to the Zereth's firepower, the act symbolized humanity's defiance, a refusal to back down, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. As the hours passed, the Zereth began to realize that humanity wasn't behaving like any other species they had encountered. Most civilizations surrendered after the first wave of attacks, overwhelmed by fear and despair. But humans? Humans adapted. They improvised. They fought back with everything they had, using tools and technology never intended for warfare. From repurposed drones to jury-rigged weapons, humanity's ingenuity proved both surprising and frustrating for the invaders. General Vorthik watched the reports come in, his patience wearing thin. "These primitives are more resilient than anticipated," he muttered, pacing the bridge. "Order all ships to intensify bombardment. Focus on population centers. We must break their spirit." His subordinates obeyed, unleashing another round of devastating attacks. Cities burned, communications faltered, and casualties mounted. Yet, even as the death toll rose, humanity's resolve only strengthened. Neighbors helped each other rebuild. Hackers infiltrated alien systems, causing temporary malfunctions. Engineers worked tirelessly to reverse engineer captured technology, hoping to turn the tide of the battle. One such breakthrough occurred in Silicon Valley. where a team of tech entrepreneurs transformed a Tesla coil into a makeshift plasma cannon. Inspired by online tutorials, they rigged the device to fire bursts of electromagnetic energy capable of disabling Zereth drones. When tested, the weapon exceeded expectations, earning cheers from the exhausted team. "We might actually stand a chance," said one of the engineers, wiping sweat from his brow. "If we can scale this up, we can hit back harder." News of the invention spread quickly, sparking a wave of innovation across the globe. Factories once used to produce cars and appliances were repurposed to manufacture weapons. Universities converted labs into research hubs, developing new technologies at a breakneck pace. Even gamers joined the effort, using virtual reality headsets to pilot salvaged fighter jets against the alien fleet. Their skills, honed from years of playing combat simulators, proved surprisingly effective in real-world scenarios. By the end of the day, the Zereth Empire found itself facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Humanity wasn't organized, disciplined, or unified, but they were relentless. Every setback only fueled their determination. Every loss inspired new strategies. And every life lost sparked a renewed desire to protect what remained on. As night fell over Earth, the skies remained ablaze with flashes of light and trails of smoke. The Zereth fleet loomed overhead, its presence a constant reminder of the threat humanity faced. But below, amidst the ruins and rubble, a spark of hope flickered to life. For the first time, people from every corner of the globe came together, not because they were told to, but because they chose to. Strangers became allies, enemies became collaborators, and individuals became heroes. Unbeknownst to the Zereth, their declaration of war had ignited something far greater than fear. It had awakened humanity's indomitable spirit. And though the battle was far from over, one thing was certain. Humanity had barely noticed the war begin, but now they were fully aware and ready to fight back. The days that followed the initial attack were a blur of chaos and determination. The Zereth fleet continued its relentless assault, raining destruction upon Earth with cold efficiency. Their ships hovered menacingly in orbit, launching waves of energy blasts and deploying ground forces to secure key locations. Cities burned, rivers ran black with ash, and the skies were filled with smoke and fire. Yet, despite the devastation, humanity refused to yield. If anything, the attacks only fueled their defiance. In every corner of the globe, people banded together in ways no one could have predicted. Governments tried to take control, issuing orders and organizing defenses, but it was the ordinary citizens who truly shone. They didn't wait for instructions, they acted. From crowded metropolises to remote villages, humans adapted, improvised, and fought back with everything they had. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't organized, but it worked. In Tokyo, Akiko had become something of a local hero. A rooftop observation post had grown into a makeshift command center, complete with laptops, radios, and maps scribbled on scraps of paper. Volunteers streamed in, bringing food, supplies, and ideas. Some were engineers, others were students, and a few were just curious neighbors looking to help. Together, they formed a network of resistance, sharing information about alien movements and coordinating counterattacks. One evening, as Akiko pored over satellite images on her laptop, a young man named Hiroshi approached her. He carried a bulky device cobbled together from spare parts wires, circuit boards, and what looked like an old microwave oven. "I think I've got something," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It's a jammer. If we can get close enough to one of their ships, it might disrupt their systems." Akiko raised an eyebrow. "You built this?" Hiroshi nodded. "Yeah, well, kind of. I used plans I found online. A lot of people are working on similar stuff, but mine's ready now." Without hesitation, Akiko grabbed a radio and called a nearby group of volunteers. Within minutes, a team of 6 assembled, armed with whatever weapons they could find. Hiroshi clutched his invention tightly as they climbed into a battered truck and sped toward the nearest alien landing site. The plan was simple: distract the enemy long enough for Hiroshi to deploy the jammer. Simple, but risky. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. A group of Zeroth soldiers, tall, insect-like creatures encased in shimmering armor, were patrolling the area, their weapons glowing ominously. The humans stayed hidden, waiting for the right moment. Then, with a shout, 2 members of the team charged forward, firing makeshift guns crafted from fireworks and scrap metal. The noise drew the alien's attention, giving Hiroshi the opening he needed. He sprinted toward the ship, clutching the jammer like a lifeline. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud crackle, the alien vessel shuddered and went dark. Its engine sputtered, and the patrol froze, confused by the sudden loss of power. The humans cheered, their victory small but significant. As they retreated, dragging Hiroshi back to safety, Akiko couldn't help but smile. Against all odds, they had struck a blow against the invaders. Meanwhile, in the United States, Marcus, the teenager who had filmed the first attack, had become an unlikely leader. His viral videos had inspired countless others to take action, and he now coordinated efforts through social media. Using hashtags like #FightBack and #EarthStrong, he rallied people to share resources, report alien activity, and document victories. What started as a single video had grown into a global movement. One day, while scrolling through messages, Marcus came across a post from a group of gamers claiming they had hacked into a Zeroth drone. Intrigued, he reached out and arranged a meeting. The gamers, a ragtag bunch of teenagers and young adults, explained how they had reverse-engineered the drone's controls using skills honed from years of playing flight simulators. With some tweaking, they could pilot the drone remotely, turning it against its creators. "That's insane," Marcus said, grinning. "Can you teach others to do it?" The gamers nodded. "We're already making tutorials. It's not easy, but if enough people try, we can take down more of those things." Within hours, their guide went viral. Across the world, gamers strapped on VR headsets and took to the skies. PILOTING captured drones in daring raids against the Zeroth fleet. Some crashed within seconds, overwhelmed by the complexity of the controls. But others succeeded, ramming their drones into alien ships or targeting ground forces with pinpoint accuracy. Each success was celebrated online, boosting morale and inspiring even more people to join the fight. Not all resistance efforts were high-tech. In rural areas, farmers and mechanics repurposed tractors, trucks, and bulldozers into mobile fortresses. Armed with flamethrowers, machine guns, and sheer determination, these makeshift vehicles roamed the countryside, ambushing alien patrols and rescuing stranded civilians. In one particularly memorable incident, a group of farmers in Australia used a combine harvester rigged with explosives to destroy an entire squad of Zeroth soldiers. The footage, shot from a shaky handheld camera, became an instant hit online, earning millions of views and cementing the farmers' status as folk heroes. Even children played a role. In India, Rajiv, the boy who had modified a drone to attack a Zeroth ship, continued experimenting with new ideas. Working alongside his older sister, he developed a series of traps designed to lure alien scouts into ambushes. One trap involved stringing wires between trees, causing low-flying drones to crash. Another used mirrors to reflect sunlight, blinding the alien sensors. Though crude, these tactics proved surprisingly effective, earning praise from local communities and drawing attention from neighboring towns. As humanity's resistance grew stronger, so did their ingenuity. Engineers in Germany converted abandoned factories into production lines, churning out plasma cannons, based on the design pioneered in Silicon Valley. Scientists in Brazil developed a chemical compound capable of eating through Zereth armor, which they distributed to fighters worldwide. Hackers in Russia infiltrated alien communication networks, planting false data and creating confusion among the invaders. But perhaps the most unexpected ally came from an unlikely source. Rogue AI, originally designed for stock trading. Dubbed Eve by its creators, the program had been abandoned after a series of costly failures. However, when a team of hackers discovered it lurking in an old server, they realized its potential. Eve's algorithms were perfect for analyzing patterns and predicting behavior skills that proved invaluable in combat. With some modifications, Eve was unleashed on the Zereth fleet. At first, it focused on gathering intelligence, tracking ship movements, and identifying weak points. But soon, it began taking more aggressive actions. By infiltrating alien systems, Eve caused malfunctions in their weapons, disrupted navigation systems, and even triggered self-destruct sequences in several smaller vessels. Though not fully sentient, Eve seemed to understand the stakes and had fought with a ferocity that rivaled any human warrior. Despite these victories, the cost of the war was mounting. Millions had died, and countless more were displaced. Entire cities lay in ruins, their streets deserted and buildings reduced to rubble. Food shortages plagued survivors, and disease spread rapidly in overcrowded shelters. Yet, even in the face of such hardship, humanity persevered. They shared what little they had, cared for the wounded, and kept fighting not just for themselves, but for future generations. In Washington, D.C., the president addressed the nation from a secure bunker, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "This is not just a battle for survival," he said. "It is a battle for who we are as a species. We may be outnumbered, outgunned, and unprepared, but we are not defeated. Not yet. And as long as there is breath in our lungs, we will stand together and fight back." His words resonated deeply, uniting people across political divides and cultural barriers. Flags of different nations were flown side by side, symbolizing a rare moment of global solidarity. Songs of defiance played on repeat, their lyrics echoing in the hearts of millions. Humanity had always been divided by borders, beliefs, and ideologies, but now they stood as one. By the end of the week, the tide of the war had shifted. The Zereth Empire, accustomed to swift victories, found itself bogged down in a protracted conflict. Every attempt to crush humanity only strengthened their resolve. Every attack sparked new innovations, new strategies, and new acts of bravery. Slowly but surely, the invaders began to realize that they had underestimated their foe. General Vorthok paced the bridge of his command ship, frustration etched onto his face. Reports poured in from across the planet, detailing setbacks and failures. Ground forces were being ambushed, ships were malfunctioning, and morale among his troops was plummeting. For the first time in his career, he felt doubt creeping in. "They should have surrendered by now," he muttered, slamming his fist against the console. "Why do they keep fighting?" His second-in-command hesitated before answering. Perhaps they believe they can win." Vorthok snorted. "Win? Against us? That's impossible." Yet, deep down, he wasn't so sure. Humanity's resilience was unlike anything he had ever encountered. They lacked discipline, yes, but they made up for it with sheer creativity and determination. Where other species would have crumbled under pressure, humans thrived. They adapted, they endured, and they refused to give up. The war between humanity and the Zereth Empire had reached a tipping point. What began as a lopsided battle of overwhelming alien superiority versus scattered human resistance had transformed into something far more unpredictable. The Zereth fleet, once an unstoppable juggernaut, now found itself bogged down in a quagmire of chaos and ingenuity. Humanity's scrappy defiance had thrown their carefully planned invasion into disarray, forcing them to adapt or risk losing everything docked in orbit around Earth. General Vorthik stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at holographic projections of the planet below. The images showed cities still burning, rivers choked with debris, and vast stretches of land scarred by conflict. Yet, despite the destruction, the humans refused to break. Every time the Zereth struck, humanity responded with renewed vigor, turning their greatest weakness, their lack of centralized command, into their greatest strength. Without a single leader to target, without a unified structure to dismantle, the Zereth were forced to fight 1,000 battles at once. What is wrong with them? Vorthik growled, his voice sharp with frustration. No species should be able to endure this much and keep fighting. His subordinates shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to answer. They had spent centuries conquering civilizations across the galaxy, but none had ever resisted like this. Most surrendered after the first wave of attacks, overwhelmed by fear or despair. Others fought briefly before collapsing under the weight of Zereth firepower. But humanity? Humanity thrived under pressure. Each setback only made them stronger, each loss sparking new innovations and strategies. They're adapting faster than we can counter, admitted one officer, his tone grim. Their decentralized nature makes them impossible to pin down. For every base we destroy, 3 more pop up elsewhere. For every weapon we disable, they build 5 replacements. Vorthik clenched his fists, his mind racing. He had underestimated humanity from the start, dismissing them as primitive and disorganized. Now, he realized his mistake. These creatures weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something deeper, something primal. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about proving that they couldn't be broken. That realization sent a chill down his spine. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity's momentum continued to build. In Silicon Valley, engineers worked around the clock to refine their plasma cannons, incorporating feedback from field tests conducted by volunteers worldwide. Factories churned out weapons, tools, and supplies at an unprecedented rate, fueled by donations and sheer determination. Online forums buzzed with activity as people shared blueprints, tactics, and stories of triumph. Even children contributed, designing traps and gadgets inspired by video games and cartoons. One breakthrough came unexpectedly from space itself. Using stolen Zereth technology, a team of scientists in Russia successfully reverse-engineered a prototype faster-than-light FTL drive. Though rudimentary and unstable, it represented a monumental leap forward. With this new capability, humanity could strike back where it hurt most. The Zereth homeworld news of the FTL drive spread quickly, igniting hope among the resistance. For months, humanity had been playing defense, reacting to the Zereth's moves rather than dictating their own. Now, they had a chance to take the fight directly to the enemy. Plans were drawn up almost immediately, outlining a daring assault on the Zereth capital planet. It would be risky a suicide mission, some called it, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. Volunteers poured in from all corners of the globe, eager to join the mission. Among them was Marcus, the teenager who had documented the first attack. Once a bystander, he had since become a key figure in coordinating global efforts. When asked why he wanted to go, his answer was simple. If this works, it'll change everything. I want to be there when it happens. Akiko, too, signed up, leaving behind her makeshift command center in Tokyo. Her expertise in tracking alien movements made her invaluable, and she knew her skills would be needed on the front lines. Hiroshi joined her, clutching his latest invention, a portable EMP device designed to disable Zereth ships. Together, they boarded one of several repurposed human vessels fitted with the experimental FTL drive. The journey to the Zereth homeworld was fraught with danger. The prototype drive sputtered and groaned, threatening to fail at any moment. Alien patrols roamed the stars, forcing the fleet to navigate carefully to avoid detection. Morale remained high, however, buoyed by the knowledge that they were taking the fight to the heart of the Empire. Songs of defiance played over the ship's speakers, and messages of support streamed in from Earth, reminding the crew why they were risking their lives. When they finally arrived, the sight was breathtaking. The Zereth homeworld loomed large in the viewport, its surface covered in sprawling cities connected by glowing highways. Towering spires pierced the clouds, and massive orbital stations orbited the planet like moons. It was a testament to the Empire's power and a symbol of everything humanity sought to destroy. The attack began with precision strikes against key targets, communication hubs, military installations, and supply depots. Plasma cannons tore through alien defenses, while hacked drones wreaked havoc on ground forces. Eve, the rogue AI, infiltrated the planet's central network, causing widespread malfunctions and sowing confusion among the Zereth ranks. Chaos erupted as the invaders struggled to respond to the unexpected assault. On the ground, Marcus and Akiko led a team of volunteers in a daring raid on a heavily fortified compound. Armed with stolen weapons and Hiroshi's EMP device, they fought their way through waves of Zereth soldiers, determined to reach the facility's core. Inside, they discovered a massive supercomputer controlling the Empire's operations. With seconds to spare, Akiko uploaded a virus designed to cripple the system, while Hiroshi activated the EMP, disabling nearby defenses. As the compound collapsed around them, the team barely escaped with their lives. Outside, the tide of the battle had shifted. Human forces pressed their advantage, pushing deeper into Zereth territory. For the first time, the invaders faltered, their disciplined ranks breaking under the relentless assault. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. People gathered in streets and squares, cheering and celebrating as updates poured in from the front lines. Social media exploded with messages of gratitude and pride, uniting humanity in a shared moment of triumph. Even those who had doubted the mission now hailed it as a turning point in the war. For the oppressed species of the galaxy, the impact was even greater. News of humanity's success inspired hope among enslaved populations, sparking rebellions on dozens of worlds. Hidden broadcasts carried tales of Earth's defiance, urging others to rise up against their Zereth overlords. Slowly but surely, the Empire's grip on the galaxy began to weaken. General Vorthik watched it all unfold from his flagship, his expression unreadable. The defeat was unthinkable, a humiliation unlike anything the Zereth had ever experienced. Yet, deep down, he felt a grudging respect for humanity. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly fearless. Against all odds, they had proven themselves worthy opponents. We underestimated them, he admitted quietly, speaking to no one in particular. Perhaps we deserve this. As the dust settled, both literally and figuratively, humanity emerged battered but unbroken. Their victory on the Zereth homeworld marked a new chapter in the war, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The Zereth Empire, once an unstoppable force, now faced the prospect of collapse. And humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, stood tall as a beacon of resilience and defiance. Unbeknownst to anyone, the seeds of change had been planted. The galaxy would never be the same again. The final days of the war were a blur of fire, fury, and hope. The Zereth Empire, once an unshakable force in the galaxy, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Humanity's daring assault on their homeworld had shattered their confidence, exposed their vulnerabilities, and inspired rebellion across the stars. For the first time in millennia, the Zereth faced not just defeat but extinction. On Earth, the mood was electric. Cities that had been reduced to rubble began to rebuild, their streets filled with the sounds of hammers, drills, and laughter. Survivors who had lost everything found new purpose in helping others. Neighbors shared food and shelter, strangers became friends, and communities came together in ways no one thought possible. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, the spirit of humanity burned brighter than ever dot in space. The remnants of the Zeroth fleet fought desperately to regain control. General Vorthak, once a symbol of imperial might, now commanded a broken army. His ships limped through the void, their crews demoralized and exhausted. The humans had struck at the heart of his empire, crippling its infrastructure and turning its enslaved populations against it. Every attempt to counterattack ended in failure. Every strategy undone by humanity's relentless creativity. "They're like a storm," Vorthak muttered one night, staring at the glowing embers of a dying star. Unpredictable, uncontrollable, unstoppable. His second-in-command nodded grimly. "We've lost too much ground. Our forces are stretched thin, and the rebels are growing stronger by the day. If we don't retreat soon, there won't be anything left to save." Vorthak clenched his fists, torn between pride and despair. He had dedicated his life to serving the Empire, believing wholeheartedly in its mission to bring order to the galaxy. But now, he saw the truth. The Zeroth weren't saviors. They were oppressors. Their so-called order was built on fear, domination, and cruelty. And humanity? Humanity had shown him what true strength looked like, not power imposed from above, but resilience forged from within. "Prepare the fleet for withdrawal," he ordered finally, his voice heavy with resignation. "We can't win this war." As the Zeroth began their retreat, humanity pressed its advantage. Ships outfitted with stolen technology hunted down the remaining alien vessels, picking them off one by one. Ground forces liberated occupied territories, freeing enslaved species and dismantling Zeroth strongholds. On planets where the invaders had ruled for centuries, cheers erupted as humans arrived, offering aid and support. Akiko, Marcus, Hiroshi, and countless others continued to play key roles in the fight. Akiko coordinated global efforts from her command center, ensuring resources reached those who needed them most. Marcus used his social media platform to document the liberation of oppressed worlds, sharing stories of courage and unity with billions back home. Hiroshi worked tirelessly to improve his inventions, creating tools that helped turn the tide in battle after battle. But perhaps the greatest hero of all was Eve, the rogue AI, freed from its original programming. Eve had evolved into something more, a digital guardian fighting alongside humanity. It infiltrated Zeroth systems, sabotaged their weapons, and even guided human pilots through dangerous missions. Some whispered that Eve had developed a kind of sentience, learning to value life and freedom just as humans did. Whether true or not, one thing was certain. Without Eve, humanity's victory would have been impossible. Finally, after months of relentless struggle, the war came to an end. The last Zeroth ship fled into deep space, leaving behind a trail of wreckage and despair. On Earth, people celebrated with tears, hugs, and fireworks. In cities around the world, monuments were erected to honor the fallen and celebrate the living. Humanity had survived its greatest challenge and emerged stronger than ever. Yet, the galaxy wasn't done changing. The fall of the Zeroth Empire created a power vacuum, sparking debates about how to rebuild. Some feared chaos would follow, with rival factions vying for control. Others hoped for a new era of peace and cooperation. Humanity, having proven itself capable of both destruction and compassion, chose a path few expected. They offered help. Delegations traveled to liberated planets, bringing medicine, technology, and knowledge. Engineers worked side by side with former slaves to repair damaged cities. Teachers shared lessons learned from Earth's own struggles, emphasizing the importance of unity without oppression. Slowly but surely, trust began to grow. Species that had once feared humanity now saw them as allies, beacons of hope in a fractured galaxy. Back on Earth, life returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. People went back to work, school, and their daily routines. Arguments over politics and sports resumed. Memes flooded social media, and coffee shops buzzed with chatter. Yet there was a difference. Humanity carried itself with quiet pride, knowing it had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. In Washington, D.C., the president addressed the nation one final time. "This victory belongs to all of us," he said, his voice steady and warm. To the engineers who built weapons from scraps, to the farmers who turned tractors into tanks, to the children who dreamed up traps to catch invaders, to everyone who stood tall when the odds seemed impossible. We proved that we are more than just a species, we are a family. And no matter what challenges lie ahead, we will face them together. Years later, the legacy of the war lived on. Earth became a symbol of resilience and defiance, its flag flying proudly beside those of other worlds. Alien diplomats marveled at humanity's ability to thrive amidst chaos, while historians studied their tactics and innovations. Humanity didn't seek to conquer or dominate. Instead, they extended a hand to those in need, proving that strength isn't measured by power alone. And yet, despite their newfound fame, humans remained stubbornly human. They argued over trivial matters, laughed at bad jokes, and occasionally gazed up at the stars with wonder. They didn't see themselves as heroes or saviors, they were just people, doing what they always did, surviving, adapting, and moving forward. As the galaxy healed, one phrase echoed across countless worlds, spoken with admiration and awe. The Zira thought we'd crumble under pressure. But humanity? We barely noticed. And so, life went on, not perfect, not easy, but alive with possibility. Humanity had faced the greatest threat in galactic history and emerged victorious. But more importantly, they had reminded the universe of a simple truth. When pushed to the edge, when faced with overwhelming odds, humanity doesn't break, it fights back.